Joining us now to talk more about this investigation is White House Senior Director for Counterterrorism, Sebastian Gorka. Sir, thank you so much for being with us. We're hearing the Minneapolis Police Department saying Friday that authorities have been in contact with the shooter's parents. What are they telling them? What is being learned from the parents?
Well, it would not be responsible of me to reveal what is happening in an ongoing investigation, but we have to put this incident into the broader context of what we've witnessed in just the last few years. More than half a dozen attacks of a similar variety involving individuals who are confused about their gender, to put it mildly. And then, as you mentioned at the top of your monologue, we have the videos, we have the statements from the dead shooter that were clearly anti-Christian, just as with the transgender attack on the Nashville Christian school in which more children were killed. There is an ideological connection to multiple of these attacks where innocent children, especially Christians and Catholics, are targeted, and that is very, very disturbing.
I know you have focused very much on this shooter being trans, and I do want to speak with you about that, but while I respect that you cannot reveal specifics about what the parents may be saying, can you characterize whether what they're saying is helpful?
No, I cannot do that. That would be utterly inappropriate from a policy position in the White House. We leave that to the local police authorities and to the FBI.
Okay, so let me ask you about this. 96% of attackers when you're looking at the U.S. Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center, looking at 172 mass attacks in the U.S. between 2016 and 2020, 96% were non-trans men. So I know you're focusing on this shooter being trans. The shooter was trans, and that is certainly of note. But are you missing the bigger picture here when you zero in on that, instead of more broadly these school shooters as an epidemic, and you perhaps miss the through line that connects them all?
Well, no, because your facts obfuscate two things. You are using data based upon the predominant gun violence, which is gang-on-gang violence with zero ideological content. If you remove all of that, the gang violence on the streets of Chicago, LA, Detroit, then you come down to a much smaller data set. So it's like those who say, gun violence in America causes so many deaths, and then fail to note that the majority of the stats they are using refer to also suicides by gun, which of course is not what we are talking about here today. So let's concentrate on mass shootings at schools, specifically Christian or Catholic schools. Then the data set is wholly different. So don't conflate different data sets just to make a political point. There was an ideological content to this attack. That's what terrorism is. It's not because somebody didn't get the drug deal they wanted. It is an ideological message, whether it was anti-Israel, as in this case, whether it targeted President Trump in its rhetoric, as we saw on one of the magazines written by the perpetrator on that YouTube video, or whether we saw the fact that it was anti-Christian and targeting children. That has nothing to do with gang violence. Let's not mix the two things up.
So let's narrow it down then, because by CNN's count, when you look at 32 school shootings since 2020, in which you have 4 or more people who have been killed. So these are the larger school shootings. Only 3 of 32 of those shootings were committed by transgender shooters.
Yeah, forgive me if I don't go with CNN stats, okay? CNN has proven itself to be wholly inaccurate in all kinds of things for the last 10 years, perpetrators of the Russia hoax, and that we didn't have an open border. So please forgive me if I don't take your stats for granted.
All right, it's simple math. 2 of 32
No, it's
shootings.
not. It's distortions. You are distorting the facts. Let me be clear. In just a couple of years, we have seen 7 mass shootings involving people of transgender nature or who are confused in their gender. 7
I saw what
in
you
just
tweeted.
the last couple of years.
I see your list of 7.
That is inordinately high. So
I see your list of 7. 2 of them
I'm
are
going to stick. I'm going to see.
Sebastian and
I'm going to
Mr.
stick
Gorka.
with the facts and not
Okay.
not CNN's pseudo facts.
We can't stick with your facts because they're not accurate. In fact, in two of them, one of the ones you quoted,
let's talk about
in one of the ones that
reputation
you,
for accuracy.
In one of the ones in which you posted, there was no evidence that
CNN's
he was trans.
Right.
In another, the individual was
didn't
known
quote-
within
I
his
didn't- I
family
didn't
by
give- I didn't
male
give it-
pronouns and
see?
used anti-LGBT
You have an agenda.
rhetoric. No, well, let me ask you this. You've made it clear, and this is not going to change. You think transgender people are the problem here. So what specifically do you think should be done?
No. When did I say that?
All right, you clearly think
When
it's
did
a,
I say that,
you
Brianna?
think it's a pattern?
You
You've
just
tweeted about it.
You just created live fake news. You just did it right in front
Mr.
of the
Gorka,
small
what do you
viewership
think
you
should be
have,
done here?
okay?
You have zeroed in on the fact, on what you see is a problem, what you claim is a problem. What do you want to do about it? What do you want to do about this problem you see?
I have noticed a disturbing. Do you think it's a problem that individuals are targeting little children at Catholic schools? Do you think that's something we should ignore?
Of course, I think that's a problem.
Thank you. So, what we should do is we should look at the early warning signals, the signs. One of these shooters at a recent school shooting had 24 interactions with the local law enforcement. Now, that beggars belief. We should be providing off-ramps. We should be providing mental health options for these individuals. I find it hard to believe that an individual goes from getting his mother to sign a change of name certificate age 17, and then just a handful of years later is mowing down innocent children in a church pew during a Catholic mass, and nobody realized there was a problem. That's what we have to address to save the next children from the next atrocity. It's not about the sexual proclivities of the individual. It's the fact that nobody seems to notice a very disturbing pattern towards violence. You don't wake up one morning saying, I'm going to do a video on YouTube threatening to kill the president, targeting Jews, targeting children. That doesn't happen overnight. Somebody saw that degradation, somebody saw those mental issues and said nothing. That's what we have to prevent. The early warning signals must be addressed if children's lives are to be saved.
And what about all the non-trans school shooters?
What about all the same thing happens? They have multiple interactions with authorities, with their schools, with the principals. Why is something not being done? Instead of blaming an inanimate object, which is the weapon, how about addressing the human being instead and giving them aid, giving them psychological support, giving them an off-ramp? That's what needs to happen. We need to stop the violence before it occurs.
To that point, DHS cut funding to the Minnesota Department of Safety and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office in July that is the kind of funding that's used to assess and manage mass violence threats like these. Was that a mistake, and should it be reinstated?
The same state of Minnesota that actually enacted gun-free zones, that we know this killer actually favored in his manifesto, in his videos. He studied the Aurora shooters policy of looking for sites where individuals were not allowed to legally carry and protect themselves. So I'd start not with the policies coming out of a Department of Homeland Security that gets the threat. I was with Governor Noem just a few days ago, and I'd concentrate on those municipalities and those governors like Tim Walz who do what? Disarm honest citizens who could protect lives and save lives. Let's start there.
But these kinds of things happen everywhere. And you're talking about giving people off-ramps, which seems like it would require assessing threats. That's funding for assessing threats. Should that have another look at it so that it could be reinstated for assessing threats?
I don't believe that the federal government is the answer for mental health issues, okay?
What about
the
for
guys
assessing
in
threats? You're in the
Washington,
business of
Can I
assessing
finish my
threats.
answer, please? Can I finish my answer? If we want to look for solutions, I believe in subsidiarity as a conservative. I believe problems should be solved at the point closest to the people affected by that problem. I would look to the town, to the city, to the county, or to the state because they know the threats in their communities better. Don't wag your finger at DHS. DHS is doing an incredible job right now keeping America safe by getting rid of illegals from this country, more than 1.6 million, thanks to Governor Noem, thanks to Tom Homan, thanks to Stephen Miller. Don't look to D.C. to solve local problems. That kid had mental issues for at least 4 years, from 17 to 21. Why wasn't somebody in the community helping him? Because they didn't get a grant from DHS? That's risible. That's laughable.
Sebastian Gorka, we thank you for being with us.
Thank you.